Hi, I'm Dave Monty and welcome to my video series, Everything Villages. Today I'm going to do my monthly market update. It's October 2022, so stay tuned. As always, if you like this video, please hit like. If you like my video series, please subscribe to my channel. Both of those actions help these videos reach more people and I would greatly appreciate it. Also, if you'd like a copy of my free 42-page guide, Buying and Selling a Home in the Villages, you can email me right here at davemontysales@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to send you out that guide. Like I said, we're going to do the market update, and if you have watched these over and over again, they probably are a little bit repetitive because I use the same slides and just kind of update them and try to give my best commentary on what I believe is going on, not just what the numbers are, but why the numbers are happening. But I'll tell you where it gets ultra repetitive and let you kind of just, I'll tell you where it gets ultra repetitive so you don't have to watch the whole thing. But remember to subscribe. So interest rates are at a 15-year high right now. They're in the mid sixes. My guess is they're going to continue to increase. And the reason they're going to continue to increase is because we just had a strong jobs report. And what that means is that the economy is still fairly strong, and they're trying to dampen that strong economy slightly to alleviate some of the issues that happen. And affordability of housing is one of them. So they are trying to put a cap on how much homes are appreciating at this point, right? Inventory is jumping, and we'll talk about jumping. It's increasing, but it kind of it went up to a certain point, went down to a certain point, now it's back up. And we're going to talk about that. We're starting to see prices flatten out here in the villages, and that's what we did predict, is that we would see a kind of an uptick and then slowly start to flatten out, and we're actually starting to see that right now. Part of it might be seasonality, and I'm going to point that out in a couple of graphs. There's a new section open just south of Highway 44 called the Village of Richmond, and that's having a slight effect on pricing in the traditional part of the villages. Now, I thought it was going to have a major effect, but it's really not. It's having a little bit of an effect, but not a major effect. All right. Now let's talk about months of inventory. This is the barometer that we use in real estate that tells you if it's a strong seller's market or buyer's market. A balanced market is 6 months of inventory. Anything less than 6 months of inventory is a seller's market. The villages is traditionally a strong seller's market. Anything really low is a very strong seller's market. Anything above starts to tilt towards buyers. I actually think that probably that 6 months is a little bit safe. I mean, it's probably closer to 4 months when you start seeing seeing it tilt more towards the buyers. So what do we mean by months of inventory? Well, if you've seen these videos, you know exactly what it means. But if you haven't, what you do is you take the current inventory. Today it was 234 homes, and you divide it by the average of how many homes have been selling over the last 3 months. Okay, so that number is 106. Now, two things have happened. That this number has increased and this number has come down quite a bit. Last moving average that I did last month was 120, 124, something in that range. Okay, so right now what we have is 2.2 months of inventory. During the really strong seller's market that we had, we were measuring this in days, 8-9 days. I don't think we ever got under a week. So maybe we're measuring in weeks, 1.1, 1.2 weeks, which is just an unbelievably strong seller's market. Okay, so right now let's take a look at the graph and the trend here. This is a 5-year graph, and you will see that inventory has been declining over the last 5 years. And it fluctuates, obviously. Some of it's seasonality. Some of it was this incredibly strong seller's market that we had right here. And we are starting to see it to tick back up. But on average, it is still declining. In my opinion, this is going on. Right now, there are two halves of the villages. It's the traditional half where the town squares are, where the golf is, where all the amenities are. There's the new section where you have newer homes, a younger retiree crowd, just not as many amenities down there. A lot of people still like it, but if just a small percentage of those people don't like it, they are now competing for basically a fixed inventory in the traditional part of the villages. So if 5 years ago there was 1,000 people in here in a month and just 20% of those people did not want to buy new. They just wanted to buy in the traditional part of the villages. Then you had 200 people going after the inventory. Fast forward to last month versus years ago, and you have 2,000 people in because it's growing word of mouth. And there's more and more people interested in the villages. And now that same 20% of those people do not want to buy in the new sections in the villages. Now you have 400 people going after the same inventory. So you'll still see a decline in months of inventory. Now, inventory levels might go up, but the pace that they're being sold will continue to sell very fast. So it's a combination of those two factors. Hope all that makes sense. But basically, in general, the demand for the villages continues to increase. And just if a small percentage of those people don't want to buy new, and that demand continues to increase, then you will continue to see a decline in inventories. All right. Now, here is the number of new listings per month. October, September, you start seeing numbers decline year over year. And the reason is because people don't like to list in the fall because the holidays are coming up. They've got other things on their mind. They might be going on a trip. They may have visitors. Who knows what the reason is. But in general, people don't like to show their homes around the holidays. So you'll see there will be a dip. And that's where we are right now. I mean, this is September, and we're just getting down to October. Now, that number is starting to decline. If I take a look at the number of new listings, they started on, and this is a moving average. So you just take an average of the last 4 or 5 months to even out this number to see what's going on as a trend. And what you kind of saw is over COVID hits here, dipped slightly, and then started to go up. So the number of people wanting to sell their homes, take advantage of the higher prices, they started to increase. And then slowly it's been declining. Now, we did have a jump at the beginning of this year. And again, some of this is seasonal in here. And then we had a jump at the beginning of this year, and then we're starting to see that decline again. But you can see if I take a look at the 5 years trending, it was trending up slightly, and now it's starting to trend down. So, all right. Days on the market, another indication of how strong of a market you have. This is the average days on the market during the really busy portions were 8, 9, 10 days on the market, which is ridiculous. Or anything that was showing very nice was going in hours. But we are starting to see an increase in the number of days that homes are sitting on the market. Now, in a balanced market, you're looking at about 60 days, 40 to 60 days on the market is actually average in an average environment. But here we're at 30 days. So it's still a strong seller's market. Another indication that's still a strong seller's market here in the villages is that you do have pricing that has continued to increase. And again, if I take a moving average, has continued to increase, but we're just starting to see it turn over. And we are starting to see it flatten out like we predicted. Right. So let's take a look at list price, and you can see that this one actually gets even a little bit more jumpy. But again, if I take that same moving average on the average list price, you start to see it turn over here, and we might even see a little bit of a decline. But again, we're just about to hit busy season, so I do anticipate this to go up again, but not as dramatically as it did over the last couple of years. All right. Let's get to why things are happening again. Okay, so at this point, this is kind of what has been happening. So people who've been watching these next slides are going to be fairly repetitive. So hit subscribe, and then feel free to take off. All right, the interest rate hikes are having an effect on the market, and this is what Freddie Mac says: is that for every 1% of interest rate hike you have a 5% drop in the number of buyers and a 4% drop in home values. All right. Will prices lower or will they crash? That's the big question. Now, I'm going to talk about an effect here in the villages. The village is a very safe place to put your money. If you think that the market's going to crash, then come buy in the villages, and we're going to talk about that. Okay, but all the economists are saying that they don't anticipate pricing to really come down. It takes an imbalance in the number of buyers and the number of sellers. And right now what's happening is they're both kind of coming down at the same pace. It's the imbalance that starts creating a change in pricing. So when we're seeing that here in the village, we're seeing fewer homes being sold, fewer homes being listed. Confidence is low overall in the market. There's no doubt about it. And I'm a consumer as well. We've sort of been looking for a home, both flipping and both to move. And, I'm a little bit nervous. You can't help but be nervous with all the news you're hearing on TV. So confidence is fairly low right now. Okay. Now, here is what the experts are saying. So first of all, if you take a look at what Fannie Mae is saying, and that's one of the big mortgage wholesalers in the country, they do believe that we're going to have a 16% higher quarter over quarter going into Q3 and Q4 of this year. Okay, so we do anticipate that prices will be higher than last year. Then if you take a look at what MBA economists are saying, again, this is per Forbes, and I'm not sure who these MBA economists are. I mean, no one really has a crystal ball, but they are forecasting about a 10% increase year over year from last year to this year total. And then next year, they're still seeing a gain. Again, what we've been predicting, which is we're still going to see a gain, but it's going to flatten out. So we see maybe a 3% increase through next year. So, and again, just, leveling off, not crashing. So let's talk about the Villages effect. Okay, now, this is probably a lot of retirement communities, but specifically here in the Villages because it's kind of the retirement community, the largest in the world. And right now, we still have baby boomers retiring at record rates. It's still 10,000 new retirees per day. Okay? So that's a huge number. And just a tiny percentage of those want to move to the Villages. You've got a lot of people moving into the Villages. And this still continues. Let's talk about just retirees in general, especially here in the Villages, which is fairly affluent. Retirees don't lose jobs. So if the job market changes, the retirees don't lose jobs. They still have their money. They tend to have larger and more diversified portfolios. They tend to have safer portfolios. So when things hit the stock market, it still affects people here, but not quite as much. And the interest rates don't have as big of an effect here in the Villages because 60% of the people pay cash. And another good chunk of them pay a huge down payment, so to maintain their payments lower. So the interest rates don't have as big of an effect. But what I don't have on here is inflation. So inflation does hit the retirees, probably a little bit harder than most, actually. So now the last thing is a constant drumbeat of demand within the Villages. Okay? And the average villager moves 3 times. I hear from buyers all the time is, I don't want to make that same mistake. I don't want to move 3 times. It's not a mistake that the people bought the wrong house. It's typically a change of circumstance, and it's typically out of the homeowner's control. And what I mean by that, it's typically health related, whether it's themselves, a spouse, or their parent. And I hear that, it still shocks me, but I hear it all the time is, I just had a parent pass away and we got a little bit more money and we want to buy a larger home. But more often than not, it's someone will come in and they'll buy a nice big designer home. That becomes too much for one person to handle, or both people who might run into some health issues, and they decide to move into a smaller home like a courtyard villa or patio villa just because it's easier to maintain, or they're going into assisted living, which creates another house to come on the market. So the average villager moves 3 times within the Villages. And people look at that and go, wow, that's large. Well, you're here 25, 30 years. So if you're here for 25 or 30 years, a lot of things happen over that span of time, which will cause a constant drumbeat of demand here in the Villages. So on the supply side, last year there were 7,000 homes sold in the Villages. 60% of those were new homes. That's 3,600 homes. If this generation is as smart as the last generation, they'll actually throttle back slightly on these homes to maintain pricing levels. And that's what they did in 2008 and 2009. And you can look at 2008 and 2009 to show what the conclusion of all this is. Okay. So is it a good time to buy? So let's talk about the conclusion of this. The conclusion is, if you believe the market's going to crash, this is the best place to put your money in real estate. Okay, now, you could always sell your home up north and rent for a little while. Hopefully home prices go down and then you go buy something. But if you want to keep your money in real estate and you want it to be in a safer place, this is a much safer place to put your money. We just have to look back to 2008 and 2009 when the market did really crash, completely different circumstances. But when that market completely crashed, you looked at about a 30% decline, 33% decline nationally. Here in the Villages, 9 to 10%. So it's a 3-to-1 ratio. So people who had their money here lost 10% of the value. People who had their homes up north lost 30% of the value of their home. Okay, so if you are on the fence of whether you need to buy or not, now again, a little bit will depend if you're going to pay cash or have interest rates are a little bit higher. Good news, you can always refinance, even if the interest rates right now are a little higher. So I'm going to do this. Okay, so if you're moving same home to same home, now's a good time. So in other words, if I've got a $500,000 home and it could go down by 30%, that's $150,000. I take that $500,000, put it in the villages, it only goes down 10%. That's only $50,000. So if I'm like home to like home, this is definitely a good place to put your money. If I'm downsizing, same thing, right? It's a good time to take a large sale of a $500,000 home and come down and buy a $400,000 villa. That $100,000 goes someplace a little bit safer, whether it's even savings or bonds or whatever. And then you only now have $400,000 in a market if you believe the prices are going to go down. Again, we don't anticipate that, okay? But I'm just saying if you believe that. If you're upsizing, it's not a bad time, but it's also, it's kind of a wash. If you're going to move within the villages, okay, same size, doesn't really matter. It's kind of a wash. If you're upsizing, I want to upsize in the villages right now. I mean, just from a confidence standpoint, again, I do think prices are going to tick up, okay, but when the constant drumbeat of the media, this is bad, that's bad, this is bad, it hits us all, even people who are in the middle of it and know that might not be true, you still hear it. So if you do believe there's going to be a crash, it's not a good time to upsize. Okay, if you're downsizing in the villages, it's a good time to do it. You're going to take more money out of the real estate market and put it someplace safer. Again, if you think it's going to crash. Okay, all right. I was going to talk about what I'll call the Richmond effect. I'm about to release a 3-part pricing series videos. We're talking about how pricing is done. I'm going to have another video on location within the villages and why prices tend to be higher in the traditional part of the villages versus newer homes. And then we are going to do what features of homes, lots, even again, location, all of those things and how those affect homes. So I'm going to have a 3-part series where we're going to talk about that effect that I just skipped over here. So look for that in the next week or two. Key takeaways: market is slowing, like we talked about, but it's slowing on both sides, okay, which is not changing the balance of the market. Prices are flattening. We are seeing better inventories. Interest rates seem to be leveling off until this latest jobs report that happened today that caught everybody by surprise. So we might see another interest rate hike. And again, if you believe the market is going to go down, this is a really good place to have your money. So I hope this has been informative. Sometimes I feel like I kind of ramble on because there's so much to discuss. It's pretty easy to say, hey, prices are flattening out and call it at that. But I'm very much, why are things happening? So if you get, inundated with too much talk, I apologize. Anyway, again, please subscribe. Please hit like. And again, if you'd like a copy of my free 42-page guide, Buying and Selling a Home in the Villages, just let me know. I also have a new cost of living calculator, which shows you all the cost of living in the villages, but I've tweaked it to become a full-blown kind of budgeting tool for my clients that you can use on an ongoing basis rather than just learning how much it would cost you to move here. So, and you can also email me right here for both of those items. I hope to be seeing you around the villages. Take care.